All right, hi everybody. Today we're going to talk about chapter 26 and 27. So in chapter 26, we see school start again, and we again continue to see both Scout and Jem becoming more mature. Jem is now in 7th grade, so they go to different schools, and Scout is in 3rd grade. She says that the Radley place has ceased to terrify her, so we see sort of some of that becoming more mature. That, the place that used to kind of terrify her as a small child, she's less afraid of now. So we see a little bit of that there. We also sort of see the reintroduction of sort of this idea of the Radleys. Scout does talk about how she still would like to see what Boot looks like. Then there is this short section here that's about the children are learning about Hitler. So keep in mind, even though this takes place in the 1930s, and we typically think about Hitler in the terms of World War II, in the 1940s, he did come to power in the 30s. And so it was already something that people were aware of. And so we do get this idea kind of a democracy versus a dictatorship in this chapter, and also the idea of persecution of people who have sort of a lower social status than others. So we see this on page 331. Okay, so sorry, it's a little bit earlier. I forgot to write down the page number. Just give me 1 second. Okay, sorry, page 329. So her teacher, Miss Gates, right, is talking about democracy and the differences between a dictatorship and a democracy. And she says, over here, we don't believe in persecuting anybody. Persecution comes from people who are prejudiced. Prejudice, she enunciated carefully. There are no better people in the world than Jews, and why Hitler doesn't think so is a mystery to me. Okay, so she clearly has this feeling about that what is happening to the Jewish people in Germany is wrong, right? That they shouldn't be persecuted just because of someone's prejudice. But then on page 331, we see Scout says that the night of the trial of Tom Robinson's trial, her teacher, the same person, was coming down the steps and saying that basically that it was time that someone taught them a lesson, and she's obviously referring to Black people in their town. Said they were getting way above themselves, and the next thing they think they can do is marry us. She says, Jem, how can you hate Hitler so bad and turn around and be ugly about folks right at home? Okay, so we again sort of see the hypocrisy of the town. We saw that in the chapter with the missionary circle as well, where they were very concerned about the rights of African people in Africa, but were not at all concerned about the rights of Black people in their own city, town, county, whatever you want to say. So, again, just sort of another example of that same hypocrisy, that same prejudice that we've seen throughout the book. Chapter 27 then is going to set up really what's going to happen for the rest of the book. So chapters 28 through 31, which you'll read today. And so the first thing in the chapter is that we learn about some things that are out of the ordinary that have been happening. And just keep in mind, whenever an author includes things like this, they don't just put them in there for the fun of it. They put them in there as foreshadowing, or, to give you a clue, or there's always a purpose for putting anything in their book. So the 3 unusual things. First, Mr. Ewell got a job and then immediately lost his job. Okay. And Mr. Ewell says that Atticus is the reason that he gets fired. So Mr. Ewell already hates Atticus, and now he thinks that also Atticus has caused him to lose his job. So that's not going to go over very well. Okay. The second thing is at Judge Taylor's house. He was home on a Sunday night alone, and he hears like a scratching noise at the back door. There was a shadow. He saw the screen door was swinging. So just kind of like some weird occurrences. Seems like somebody's in, maybe trying to like either intimidate him or get into his house. And then the third thing is that Helen Robinson, who was Tom's wife, she's being harassed. So Mr. Ewell is either yelling at her as she goes to work, or he is following her down the street, all of these things. So Aunt Alexandra is quite concerned, right? Because she, thinks that all of these things are connected, right? Bob Ewell's involved, or she assumes that he's involved with Judge Taylor. But she thinks, that Atticus needs to be more concerned. And Atticus still just continues to say that it's really not that big of a deal, and that, he's just holding a grudge and it's fine, that he'll settle down, right? So then the last little bit of this chapter is just kind of talking about the town a little bit more. And we learn that for Halloween this year, they are going to be doing a pageant. So this is kind of like if you ever did, just like little performances at your elementary school or something like that. So there's going to be a pageant on Halloween, and Scout is going to be a ham. The teacher who is putting it together, or the woman who's putting it together, wants everyone to represent different agricultural products from their county, and so Scout is going to be a ham. Now, you might think, again, that that's just like a random tidbit, but it does become important. So you need to consider the construction of her costume. So on page 339, it says, Mrs. Crenshaw, the local seamstress, had as much imagination as Mrs. Merriweather. Mrs. Crenshaw took some chicken wire and bent it into the shape of a cured ham. This she covered with brown cloth and painted it to resemble the original. I could duck down under, and someone would pull the contraption down over my head. It came almost to my knees. Okay, so that is what it looks like, and I'm just going to show you a picture so that you can see it. Okay, so just keep in mind as you're reading chapter 28 through 31 that Scout can barely see anything. This is from the movie. So you can see how it's this like chicken wire costume with like kind of paper mache over it, and then this tiny little hole for her eyes, and her arms are stuck inside. So just really keep that in mind as you're reading chapter 28 through 31, that she can't see anything and she can't use her arms at all. Also important to note that Atticus and Aunt Alexandra do not go to the pageant, so make sure you keep that in mind as you're reading for today as well.